Okay, now we're on. Okay, so let me go back to I'll go back to my shared screen a second. So the idea of a tinus though is beferish in the Rambam exactly the opposite of that. In other words, it's beferish the opposite of it being something which is in the past. So if you look at the halacha from the Rambam in Ilchas Tinius, he begins by saying there are yomim shekol Yisrael misanim bahem ibnei hatzaros. Right, that there are days that all of Klal Yisrael fasts on because of the tzaras Shiur that took place, which certainly seems past tense. Okay, L'or halavavos liftach darchei tshuva, in order to awaken one's heart and to open up the pathways of tshuva. Now, let's stop a second here, because also it's a derech Etz Chaim shir, right? Tshuva doesn't mean repentance. I understand what tshuva means, because tshuva requires a complete change of paradigm in order for it to function. So the Rambam begins by saying what a tinus is about is to allow from an external experience to awaken the hearts, to open Darchei Tshuva. The Darchei Tshuva we've also discussed in Hilchos Tshuva in the third parak. Darchei Tshuva is not Tshuva. Darchei Tshuva are things which may bring you to Tshuva, right? So there he describes all the things that are classically associated with Tshuva, but are not Tshuva. The way we daven, the way we say slichus, the way we fast, right? Those are things that bring you to Tshuva. And then he continues to say as follows, B'yazichron l'ma'aseinu haroim, right, so that's obvious. We want that day to be a zikaron. We want us to become aware of our bad deeds. But then he throws in something which is not so obvious. Umaaseh avosenu shahaya kemaasenu ata. The maisim, we are not only are we aware of our maisim, but we're aware of the maisim of our avos, who did exactly the same as us. Ad shegarim lahem v'lanu osan hatzaras, until it caused for them and for us the exact same tzaras. So the Rambam here is saying a earth-shattering idea. We discuss this every tinus, so I know this is a little bit of a chazar for people, which is that the point of a tinus is to realize that we essentially are repeating the same mistakes as our avos, and therefore I don't care. And are you going to say, why isn't it enough? I worry about my own problems. Why do I got to worry about my avos' problems? Because the Rambam's saying is that doesn't work. The only possible way to deal with the problems that are on this level that a tinus address, and we'll just talk about what that is, but if they're on this level where they're so basic that a tinus has to address them, means to realize that the tinus we're having over what happened in Shiva Asar b'Tammuz is because the things that caused Shiva Asar b'Tammuz 2,000 years ago still cause Shiva Asar b'Tammuz today. That we're doing the exact same things. There are some basic underlying mistakes in the way that we are dealing with life, in the way we're dealing with everything, which lead us to have this tinus. So the point of the tinus is to not only deal with ourselves, but to deal with our avos. That's a very bold statement for the Rambam to say. How can he say that we essentially are blaming our avos? Well, weren't they much better than us? We're so much worse. In other words, we're obviously leading very different lives. We certainly look at the past and say they had more, but he's saying it'll make a difference. Whatever they were more, whatever they were less, the basic underlying issue wasn't addressed. And he has a raya. And his raya is that the pasuk says, that to do vidui only on the things that we know are a problem is not enough. There needs to be a vidui not only on our own avon, but our avonos of our avos. And the reason is very simple, because we assume that the givens that were from the avos must have been the way things are supposed to be. So if I work on the same things to be like them, at least I'm getting closer. The point of a tinus is getting closer is nonsense. We're not trying to get closer. You either understand the underlying issue that they had a problem with, and being more like them doesn't help you at all. You have to get past it in order to see the thing which is the commonality of your oven, which is the same as their oven. And remember here, because we're talking about all the Tainesim, and Tainus is a different issue, but all the Tainesim are about the Churban Bayis. And it's not about the fact that a building was knocked down. There is an essential element which relates to the problems which are ultimately going to bring Klal Yisrael and the entire world to where it needs to be that you can have a Beis Hamikdash. So the idea of things being better doesn't help, and we're going to discuss that. Things need to be the way they need to be, and the tinus is meant to point that out. Now, Shiva Asar b'Tammuz is very easy. I'm going to put you guys back on. So if guys want to comment, they should be able to use the comments. Let me stop the share. And if I see the chat, somebody actually chatted once already over here. Yeah, I'm recording the share. So they can ask questions in the chat, and I'll come back to it. But the idea of Shiva Asar b'Tammuz is a very obvious moed, because when you open up and you have there the Gemara, and I'll go back to the share screen again so you can see the Gemara again, right? So the Gemara says that there were a bunch of things that took place. There were 5 things, it's a Mishnah really in Tainus, that 5 things took place in Tar Avos and Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. And here's what they are. The Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, Nishtabru HaLuchos. The first thing that happened was the Luchos were broken. I want to also be medayik here, because it's very important. The Rambam says the same thing. And the Rambam, when he brings the same thing, says Nishtabru HaLuchos. He doesn't discuss the Ma'aser Meraglim. In other words, the Ma'aser Meraglim, truth is according to the Rashi in Masechet Shavuos, was the day before Tisha B'Av. It was in the 8th of Av. The Shtabru HaLuchos, in some ways, I don't know if the Egel was built the day before he came down and broke the Luchos, or if it was that day, but regardless, it's not the making of the Egel which causes Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, it is the Shviras HaLuchos. So the Gemara says the 5 things are the Shviras HaLuchos, Batal HaTamid, Hufka Ha'ir, right? That the Tamid was stopped, and that the city was pierced, that they came in. The Saraf as Pustamas Satara, it also was the day that Apustamas burned the Sefer Torah. The Hemit Tzelem Behechal was the day they put a Tzelem in the Heichal. But that means then is that, I'll get to questions at the end, David, but I'm glad you wrote it. What it means though is you see clearly we're dealing with a moed. It's not just happens to be a day that now we have a Tainus on. You see it's a moed because the things keep happening on them over and over and over again. It's a day which is miyuchad for certain things to happen. Now, if you look at the 5 events, there are some very, I think that the common denominator is a bit clear. Well, it's a bit clear, but let's at least clarify it. You have to understand what the Shviras HaLuchos is the best mashal for the entire thing. Why? Because all the things that happened on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz were things that we viewed as being written in stone. They weren't going to change. It's the way things are. So Batal HaTamid, the Tamid, you understand what a Korban Tamid is? When you open this week's Parsha, Parshas Pinchas, the Tamid is contrasted to every single Korban. It's something which was done every single day. Every single day. And that should ever be stopped? Certain things are never going to stop. That's how you look at it. It's every single day. You're going to, that the wall of Yerushalayim was broken. It says in the Midrashim, everybody viewed, no matter what's going on, we're safe, we're within, it's a Kadosh Baruch Hu's city, we have no possibility of them ever penetrating it. It's impenetrable, not because the defenses are impenetrable, it's impenetrable because who could possibly imagine Yerushalayim, Yer HaKodesh, would be taken over? It's impossible. It was penetrated that day. A Sefer Torah is burnt up. You understand the Sefer Torah was universally understood as being important. It was universally respected. There was no such thing as somebody being mavaza a Sefer Torah. And here it should be the day that somebody should burn it. You put a tzelem in the heichal. The heichal of Hashem is going to have a tzelem in it? Impossibility. These things were viewed in the time of Bayis Rishon. Certainly they were viewed as supernatural. In the time of Bayis Sheni, they were viewed as a continuation from that Bayis Rishon. It was inconceivable. And the Shviras HaLuchos are exactly that. The Shviras HaLuchos are, I have something HaKadosh Baruch Hu has written on these luchos. And these luchos, Moshe Rabbeinu is able to come down and break and say we can't be that way anymore. That's it. And it's so important that the last words of the Torah, Le'enei Kol Yisrael, Rashi says, refers to the Shviras HaLuchos. That ends up being the most important thing Moshe Rabbeinu did in his entire life. Kadosh Baruch Hu's maskim al yado, that the breaking of those luchos. So this idea of that things that are written in stone, that we view as written in stone, are still actually penetrable, that they're actually not so solid, is what Shiva Asar B'Tammuz is about, and obviously relates very much to our particular situation at the moment as well. And we've talked about that on a few occasions. We'll have the opportunity to talk about it again more today. But that's the yesod of Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, that things that I see as being absolutely absolutes, I first have to realize are penetrable. Now, the truth is that Asar B'Teves alludes to this. All the things that ultimately lead up to a Churban bias, to some degree, relate to the fact that we're stuck in a particular way of seeing things and we can't get by it. And those all generally have to do with something which I mentioned earlier. In other words, our avoda on an individual level has a tendency to be, and I'm not being critical of it, but you have to understand that the flaw in it is, and certainly in terms of the entire Jewish people, until recently, another discussion, not for now, has been, can we get better? Can we get better? If you were to ask the typical Jew, most of you are in America, so I can make fun of you. If you ask the typical Jew at shul, oh, you don't have shuls anymore, I forgot. If you ask the typical Jew, if we get all of Klal Yisrael, we're going to do a $25 million fundraiser, which is going to go and take all the Shiur organizations together. And we know we have come up with a formula that if all the Shiur organizations in the world make everybody just as frum as they were at the time of the first Beis Hamikdash, right? Sounds like a great idea, except obviously it's a complete waste of money. Because if I make everybody as frum as the day before the Churban Habayis, it's still the day before the Churban Habayis. So the issues that we're dealing with are so fundamental, right? And aren't necessarily obvious, by the way. I'm not claiming I necessarily have the solutions, but the problems Klal Yisrael have that the Tainus is always coming to deal with are so fundamental and go all the way back to such underlying issues that the level of tshuva literally takes a millennia. It takes thousands of years for Klal Yisrael to be able to advance in such a way, which brings them to the type of paradigm change that allows for the type of tshuva that's ultimately going to allow for a Beis Hamikdash. But it means then, just for introduction again, is that if you're going to fast on Shiva Asar v'Tammuz, right, you're going to pay attention to what the day's about. You need to examine issues of the Churban bias that relate to us very deeply, because ultimately our lives are completely affected by the Churban bias. You know, we read here, we've already davened Shacharis and Mincha, and yes, we had a minion yeshiva for Mincha today. Not only Shacharis, it was great, right? What do you learn at every single time? You learn essentially about Shiva Asar v'Tammuz, right? Vayichal is Shiva Asar v'Tammuz. That's what Kadosh Baruch Hu is saying. Start building another set of luchos. What is the discussion there? Right? Moshe Rabbeinu gets to Kadosh Baruch Hu to forgive Yisrael, Hashem Kel Rachum B'chanim. We learn the Shloshes Midos. The Shloshes Midos and the Psalacha of the new luchos essentially means that we've agreed to live in a world that doesn't function properly. We've gotten the Kadosh Baruch Hu to agree to an imperfect world, and we're good with that. In fact, the unfortunate thing is that all of us are really good with that, because we're not ready for that perfect world. So, but the problem is that Moshe Rabbeinu getting a Kadosh Baruch Hu to agree to such a thing means that there's we're going to cry over not having a Beis Hamikdash when it says it's because your door wasn't roy for it. That's not like some joke. It's not some frum thing to say. It's a serious thing. We obviously aren't ready for a Beis Hamikdash if we're willing to live in an imperfect world. Nekuda. Right? Shiva Asar v'Tammuz is the day where the luchos were broken, where Moshe Rabbeinu essentially said, we'll have a compromised existence, and the compromised existence will be the best what we can possibly do. And then our avoda is, are we good with that compromised existence? Do we see that compromised existence as being a positive thing? Do I see that's how I want to lead my life? I'll tell you a funny story that I had with two people just this week, which is so nogea, this type of thing. Right, all you guys who are in America, some of you are in Eretz Yisrael, right? Understand that for the most part, you can't come. You can't come. You can't get on a plane and come to Eretz Yisrael, right? Now there are people that can. There are people that can because they're Israeli passport holders. They're Israeli passport holders, and they could come. What could they come for? To go to yeshiva. They're yeshiva large, but they're in the right age to go to yeshiva. Right? Aaron knows the mice I'm talking about right now because it happened 5 minutes ago, right? But it's too complicated this year to go to Eretz Yisrael. Not kedai. Instead, the entire United States, there are people trying to get in right now to be able to come to yeshivas. You have an Israeli passport, which allows you to come into the country, right? Why? Not kedai, right? Not kedai. The situation that I'm in is good. It's fine. It's okay. I was going to say that I'm being very petty and picking a very small issue. Maybe. But the fact that brains can work in such a way that it makes more sense for me not to be in Eretz Yisrael. Makes more sense. To me, if somebody says such a thing, is living on another planet. I don't even know. I don't know what kind of alien they are. But Shiva Asar v'Tammuz is literally a saying. You get used to certain things. You think they're written in stone. And what we've learned, all of us, incredibly over the last 5 months, is that nothing is written in stone. You don't have to have weddings. You don't have to have shuls. You don't have to have schools. You don't have to have yeshivas. You can't get into Israel. Nothing's written in stone, right? The biggest joke being that every time somebody thinks they've actually controlled this thing, David Mannheim is the guy to blame for all this. But Israel thought they did such a good job over here. You can't even control it. It's not controllable. It's not controllable. So all the things that we literally have our lives built in stone on, we find are literally dust. They're nothing. And you have to learn to live a life where you have absolutely no idea what's going to happen next. Anyway, I'm going to go on a little bit because I want to discuss, I really want to use the today as maybe the first of two or maybe three, just some things to understand about the whole Bein HaMetzarim period, which we're entering. The entire period of Avelus, which we're entering, which is from Shiva Asar and Tammuz to Tisha B'Av, and to start understanding how deep and important it is. In other words, this period of time is very, very much a moed. The Eicha, which we're going to read on Tisha B'Av, goes all the way back, and we'll discuss it maybe in another shiur, to the Ayeka and Gan Eden, the surprise that the lack of ability that we have and what Tisha B'Av allows for, that level of destruction affects our lives on every single level. So I want to go back to a yesod. So I want to examine for a minute Tisha B'Av. And I know we're here in Shiva Asar Tammuz, but I want to examine Tisha B'Av for a minute. And that's like this. Let me go back to you guys and share my screen. I'm going to share my screen again, show you something. Okay? No, that's not it. This is what I want. It's like this. It's a very interesting thing happens. The Churban Bayis is on Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is the original moed of Tisha B'Av takes place at the Maisa Meraglim. The Maisa Meraglim is I want to examine that Maisa for a minute because I think that in understanding it, and we can develop a new way of seeing some things which we're sort of aware of. The Maisa Meraglim begs the question of what was going on? Why were we sending out Meraglim? Nu, Kadosh Baruch Hu says we're going to have Eretz Yisrael. What do we got to send out Meraglim for? So I've discussed this a couple of times when I was in Chutz La'aretz, when I was for the summers. There's a Rabbeinu Bechaya at the very beginning of Parsha Shlach. As far as I know, it's the most complete discussion of the idea of hishtadlus and bitachon that exists anywhere. He puts it out as clearly as he possibly could. And he says like this. He brings that's the way he starts the parshas in his introductions. He brings a pasuk from Mishlei. Sus muchan liyom mulchama v'la'Hashem atshua. That you prepare a horse for the day of war, and God will bring the Savior. He'll be the one who will save you. So he says, what's going on over here? So he says like this. Shlomo Melech alav shalom yazir kol adam b'chasuv hazeh sheyaseh kol davar sheyitztarech la'asos u'b'derech hateva kol ma shebekocho. How does life work? A person is required to do everything he can possibly do, and in the natural way, every single thing he can do with his strengths. You do a maximum. You do your 120%. The rest you leave to Shamayim. A nace only takes place when there's a lacking in nature, meaning nature can't get you farther, so then we have a nace. The Ikar Yetziras Ha'adam Bonei Al Midas HaTeva. Man's creation is built on nature, right? All the systems in our body working, etc., etc. And all the things we do within the natural confines. A person needs to do all of the actions and all of the inyanim, in all of the preparations in order to be able to achieve that which he wants, and to accomplish what it is that he wants to get done. So your classic example, which is exactly the Parshas Meraglim, if you want to go to war on your enemies, you got to get the best weapons, the F-35, you got to get the best weapon systems, you got to get everything you need, the best tanks. If you don't, you say God will take care of it. You're going to lose the war, no matter what God wants. And you got to give the other example, someone who's sick, right? And there's all sorts of things you can do, right? So you have to do everything you can. He has to eat the things he has to, keep away from the things he can't do. He has to mishtadol b'kol kocho, do everything that he possibly can do within nature, everything possible, and then it'll work out that the Ratzon Hashem will come out in the place where he no longer can reach. And that's what he goes on to explain. Look at the yellow part. So he says, what we're discussing here is a person needs to do everything that he has the power to do, the way the world is meant to work. And then the nace will take place above and beyond the Maisa Ateva. Yisrael didn't need to send Meraglim, because their victory was not going to be dependent at all on nature. Kimal Pias Chus Va'onish was dependent on their Chus and Onish. The Imain Zakayim Ma'at Nehem, if they're a Zachai, they can have a few people go out and they'll destroy everybody. If they weren't, They can have the biggest army in the world and they'll lose. There's a mitzvah in the Torah for Yisrael to do all of their hishtadlus and preparation that they can do, and then leave things over to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Which is essentially saying that the whole Ma'aser Meraglim came about because they did what needs to be happened. How's it work? How's it work then, hashkacha and the idea of your hishtadlus and your bitachon b'fidus b'beinu b'chaya? It comes out that essentially the hashkacha, and this is a very Purim-dik idea, right? The hashkacha takes place through me. I do everything, and that gives place for the hashkacha to take place, which means that the way the world works is that by my doing the things which need to happen, the bria is expressed through my actions outside from an outside place. I'm doing everything I can, but lamaisa works out from an outside place. And that ends up being the yesod of the Meraglim mess up, right? Because the Meraglim actually don't come back and say anything that's not true. But the point is that that's what's but the funny thing is why should that be the thing which needs to be understood when we're discussing what is ultimately the Churban Habayis? Why is that going to be understood at the time of the Churban Habayis? Why does that have to be understood at the time of the Ma'aser Meraglim? Why is that the place where the whole thing is learned out? And that's the amazing thing. I want to show you something. We're going to continue. I'm going to share my screen again so I can show you something. Oh, there we go. Like this. Right? So we all know, right? We're all familiar with this. The Hakdama of the Chavetz Chaim, right? I've spoken about it 100 times. When we go and we work through what are the things which cause our gullus the most, there's all sorts of things. And this we know from the Ma'aser Meraglim, that the chet of Lashon Hara is above everything, right? I mean, we know this for a lot of reasons. So he gives his reasons. This is the ikar reason for our goals. Famous thing, because they spoke Lashon Hara. So you fix this up, how can there be a geula? This is the chet that causes us to have golos. Everybody's familiar with this idea. I just wanted to bring it out in the Chavetz Chaim, but it doesn't answer how it's true. It doesn't answer why it's true. In other words, the chet of Meraglim is clearly an issue of Lashon Hara. Why should that be the thing? You're going to tell me the worst thing a person can really do is Lashon Hara? Gezel, Arayas, Avodah Zarah. Right? And remember that Chazal bring all these things down when they deal with the Churban. So really, and this the Chavetz Chaim is saying what the Yerushalmi says. He's saying something very familiar. What is it? And the Ma'aser Meraglim we know is a Ma'aser of Lashon Hara. So what is that? What happens here? What is that? So my questions coming into this are: what are the issues of Churban which deal with Lashon Hara having to be the issue? And secondly, how does that tie into the fact that the Ma'aser of the Meraglim, the Shlichus of Meraglim, which ultimately leads to the Churban, is all based on the fact that you need to understand how hishtadlus and bitachon work, essentially. How the expression of your work in this world is expressed within the Bria, through how Kadosh Baruch Hu's Maisa in the Bria is expressed completely through your hishtadlus. So I want to show you something. I'm going to go back to my document here. I'll share my screen again. Having fun sharing my screen. Rav Shaftel never does this, so I figure I may as well have fun. It says like this. The Rambam brings down like this. Okay? Rambam Hilchos Deis Perek Zayin Halacha Beis. It says like this. Ezu Rachel. What's a Rachel? This is in Hilchos Lashon Hara. It says Ezu Rachel is a shetoin davar v'holech mizeh lezeh. And someone who carries something and goes from this person to that person. But Omer and say Kach Amar Ploni, Kach Bekach Shamati. That this is what so and so said, such and such I heard al Ploni. Aval Bishu Emes, even if it's true. It destroys the whole world. And then he says in Yesh Avon Godol Mizeh Ad Ma'od. Listen to the words. There's a greater oven than this, very much, and it's included in the klal of the lav of the loselech rachel, right? The Rambam's isur, the lav is loselech rachel. So there's an oven godel mizad ma'od. It's in the klal of the lav of loselech rachel, hu lashon hara. Now, whoa, because it doesn't make any sense logically. If this is the bigger chet, then how can it be included in the klal of the first chet? Doesn't make sense to say the ikar is rechilus and lashon hara is greater than rechilus, yet it's included in the klal of rechilus, but it's an oven which is greater. It doesn't make any sense. One doesn't follow the other. But this is the key, and this is the key of the Meraglim, and this is, you'll see, it ties things together, and And very, very nice in terms of how the Churban look at this Rambam again. What's a rochel? The shetoin dvarim v'holech mizelezeh. You get that word v'holech? You see that? What's a Baal Lashon Hara? Over here he talks about it. I yellowed it in. Baal Lashon Hara is that sheyoshev v'omer kaf v'kaf. I don't follow. Why is this holech and this yoshev? Right? And clearly the Rambam is making a point. In other words, I'm saying a holech and a yoshev because I'm describing how Lashon Hara works in terms of the yoshev. And part of what's going on here in terms of the Meraglim, remember the Meraglim were, it's Loselech Rachel. It can't be a coincidence that that's what the Meraglim are doing, even though Lamaisa, it's Lashon Hara, it's not Rechilus that they say, because they're not being toying Dvar, they're being Koveya. But that's the point the Rambam's trying to make. The way Rechilus and Lashon Hara work is that I have all this information. By the way, at the end of the Parsha of Maisa Meraglim, we have Parsha of Tzitzis, right? Lo sasru acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem. Acharei einechem, what's that mean? Don't turn after your eyes. Why does the Torah just say, don't look? Why does it say, don't follow? Don't follow what your eyes see. Because information by definition comes in. That's what eyes are. Eyes are open, right? That's the Chavetz Chaim talks about the ear, that the ears are open. Your senses are open. You're always taking in information. So Loselech Rochel is taking this information from here to here to here to here. It's just information. It may cause fights, it may cause terrible things, but it's just information that's being passed on. He's being holech. The Rambam's saying with the Baal Lashon Hara, he has to come out of the klal of a rochel. Because what he does is he takes that and he is yoshev. You understand? He takes all that information and he is now koveya that this is what it means. And that's the definition of Lashon Hara. I'm koveya that this is what it means. These are the ramifications. This is what I make of that information. The Rechilus can still be just information. Bad information, good information, doesn't make a difference. Just information. But the yoshev the Rambam is talking about becomes Lashon Hara. What it's pointing out, what the Rebbeinu Bachai is pointing out in the Maisa Meraglim, and what is the common denominator with Lashon Hara, and why it's so destructive to Eretz Yisrael is exactly this. If you're going to have a which is moving forward and is ultimately doing what the Rebbeinu Bachai talks about, is expressing the bria, the koach habria, the koach of the bore, in the actions that we do. In other words, we're allowing through doing our complete avoda for that bria to then be expressed the way it needs to be. When I call lamala miderech hateva, it now becomes expressed within teva. The only way that can possibly happen is if I'm not being koveya the definition of what it is that's going on. The Lashon Hara becomes so destructive in terms of Eretz Yisrael is because the whole idea of Eretz Yisrael and the whole idea of being able to develop as an Am has to be that we're not koveya things before it ends up coming. And not koveya things before things end up happening. The idea of Shiva Asar b'Tammuz, the beginning of these 3 weeks, is exactly that. Things are set in stone. This is how things are. Right? This is how things are. Moshe Rabbeinu destroys that. And we every year have to have a tinus that begins the entire period of time leading into Tisha B'Av by understanding that nothing is set in stone. The things that I set in stone aren't set in stone. And I tell you, it's a phenomenal year in the sense of all the insanity that is going on, because literally we have learned that nothing in life is set in stone. Nothing at all, right? A classic example this year, classic. How many years ago was it they had the rally in Citi Field against the internet? What was it, a year, 2 years ago? Was it? I'm sorry, how long ago was it? 2 years ago, something like that? There's not a person on the planet right now who could live without internet, right? Doesn't make a difference how frum you are. Doesn't make a difference how black your hat is. There's not a person on the planet that could live without internet right now. So this is the thing which we made sure to fight against, right? Benji can tell you, or I'm sure everybody has, maybe John can tell you in the school he works in, how many people, how the schools had to run around to furnish now laptops and iPads and install internet, right? All over the place, because otherwise nobody can learn Torah. The thing which we fought against becomes now the thing which everybody's got to have. Which means that the more you're setting your definitions in stone of what things are going to be, the less possibility there is for tshuva. Because the tshuva that Tisha B'Av and Shiva Asar B'Tammuz require on such an underlying level, on such a fundamental level, require the idea to understand that there are things that I think are objective that are just completely subjective, completely absolute subjective. And the only reason they have any objectivity is because I made them so. Look, you guys in America just lived through this nonsense of the Black Lives Matter Holocaust over there, right? Where the most idiot, yes, the guy who stepped on the guy is a Russia. As far as I can tell, they can give that policeman the electric chair. They can hang him in public. I don't care, right? He deserves that. I have no problem with that. But all of a sudden now, all white people have been suppressing black people for all millennia. The United States was built on the back of a suppressed. And if you say anything not like that, you get killed. Of course, a football player can stand up and say the Jews are the ones suppressing the blacks, and that's already not a problem because you're talking bad about the Jews, right? But that's the world you live in. That things which were 100% yesterday are now completely 100% gone. And yes, and regardless of whether Donald Trump is very good for my country or not, but if you were to ask somebody 5 years ago, could this guy possibly become president of the United States? No right normal-minded person would tell you this, right? But that's what it is. And Kanye West may be your next president for all I know, right? So the world that you see that's crumbling, all the givings that are crumbling, when we say a dor shekulo chayav, everybody's used to this idea of Mashiach only come in a dor shekulo, that's kulo zakai or kulo chayav. This is what it means to be a dor shekulo chayav, where everything's gone. Everything's gone. Because only through the absence of givens, only through the absence of all the things which we thought were so important, are new paradigms able to develop. Right? I've said this 100 times. You guys have heard me say this 100 times. Right? How do you move, right? How do you move past democracy? Right? Democracy seems like as good as you're going to get, right? But we know we have a Melech HaMashiach. I personally, I don't think any of you can psychologically come to a place where you can see the idea of getting rid of democracy, right? You just can't. Yet it'll happen, right? We can't think of a better system than capitalism, right? But we know there are problems. It's an imperfect world. There's some or other breaking of paradigms that allow us to end up having a world which works better. That's just the way it works. How you get there, I have no idea. That's the whole problem. The Tanesim, and Shiva Asar B'Tammuz in particular, and Tisha B'Av ultimately, and we'll discuss another shiur for Tisha B'Av beforehand, are meant to let you examine the most underlying fundamental issues and understand that the idea, there is nothing objective. We'll discuss it more about on Tisha B'Av, but the idea of B'chia Shel Chinam, right? That the Gemara says, Chazal say, that Tem B'chitim B'chia Shel Chinam, Ani Ekva Lechem B'chia L'Doros, this idea of Chinam, which comes up over and over and over again by Tisha B'Av, Sinas Chinam, you have it all over the place. The idea of Chinam is, it's without objective context. That's what it means. Chinam, it's just not objective. So when they want to go back, Adaga Sha'achanu Mitzrayim Chinam. Chinam is always what it's going to be about. Things that are free. And that is why America is the land of the free. It's completely chinam. There is nothing objective that goes on over there. It's whatever the latest news cycle has now said is the subjective reality, and now we can't talk in any other way, or else you're a racist or a misogynist or whatever you are. And that's the way the world works. Anyways, on this Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, I don't know. I don't know what your davenings are like. I don't even know if you daven with a minyan. I'm saying it's an easy tinus to relate to Slichas, and it's an easy tinus to relate to the Vayichal Moshe. And the Vayichal Moshe, because it's Mamash Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, but I'm saying it's a very easy tinus to relate to a world which is crumbling, and the tshuva that is necessary to be able to get beyond and to start thinking. Some people get paid a lot to think outside the box, right? It's like a thing, think outside the box. People are, but society as a whole, right, tries to make sure that you don't ever do that. You stay in that box. That box is Hukva Ir. Klal Yisrael lived in that box, and it got broken through. And that's what Tisha B'Av is about. That's what Shiva Asar B'Tammuz is about. So, yeah, there's a very big picture that's beyond each and every individual in terms of a tinus, much bigger. And the emes is that the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu seems to run the world is that our individual action will only be part of a compilation of a change in society, which will probably come from outside of ourselves in such a major way that we couldn't possibly have predicted on any level. We couldn't do anything to make it happen. But on the individual level, it requires, that's the self-examination, right? That's the it's posech. It's supposed to open up the levavos, right? That the lashon the ora levavos liftach darchi atshuva. That now I can see just to start to think. What are the things? Where are the things where I've trapped myself so badly, and in trapping myself, I am ma'akev my own ability to chew. That's Shiva Asar b'tamas. If there are questions, you can unmute yourselves. You can speak up. David Manheim writes, "Why do we care about the specific manifestations of what happened? Do they?" So, David, I think you know the answer to that. The specific manifestations are ultimately just reflective of the big
Right. So they're all reflecting the basic idea that we fast because we need to get outside of the assumptions that we had and reconsider things. Are they supposed to also point towards where we're going, or are they just supposed to say you need to start over and rethink everything?
I don't know. I mean,
no
what
hints.
would he say when Moshe Rabbeinu broke the luchos? Did he tell you where you're going, or he just broke the assumption? The pashtus, he didn't tell anybody where they're going. He didn't even know where they were going to go. He had to sit there he had to go up for another 40 days to get somewhere. The result of Shiva Asar b'tamas ultimately is Yom Kippur, right? I lost David in there somehow. He moved around on my screen. Anyway, there you are. You shifted over because somebody stepped out of the chair. But the result of Shiva Asar b'tamas is Tisha B'Av. I'm saying it's Tisha B'Av, but it's ultimately Yom Kippur, right? The Luchos Shneim is Yom Kippur. The Luchos Shneim being Yom Kippur is we live in a world where we're always sort of cycling back to tshuva, but also we live in a world which is imperfect, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu sholchei etam b'toch tumasam, which means that he's willing to let us stumble along until it arrives at where it's ultimately supposed to get. Right? But that means we're by definition living in an imperfect world, and that we're okay with it is the problem, is what Shiva Asar b'tamas is sort of trying to point out. There are going to be different, look, the Asar b'teva says these things, every one in Tom Gedaya, all four Tanesim over the Churban, which were Kavua, Al Pi Navim, basically, are talking about specific. The Rambam tries to allude to what the specific issues are. But in Shiva Asar b'tamas, there's no more dramatic event that took place, I think, in the entire history of Klal Yisrael than the Shiur Haluchos. Even the Churban Bayis. The Churban Bayis may have had more of a effect, but the Shiur Haluchos changed history. Shiur Haluchos was the equivalent, in some degree, of eating Pnei Tzadas. Right? We went back to being mortal. We went back to we had to take off our adayim. We went back to living in a very b'diavad way. Okay, there are different levels of b'diavad. Yeah. Other questions, comments, interesting things. Okay.
Rabbi, Rabbi, question. You said before that you don't have the answers. I'm wondering, to what extent do we even have the questions? How much do we know about what is wrong, or are we searching for that too?
I think when people stop to think, they're very aware of the questions. So some of the questions are very obvious. Some of the questions are obvious. Look, all the real questions are obvious on an uncomfortable level, right? Me and you live in Eretz Yisrael, right? We have a very uncomfortable question. We live here. We know there's 1.5 million Arabs in this occupied territory. You want to be politically correct. You want to call it Yehuda V'Shomron, right? We know there's no solution. Me and you, we both live here. We know there's no solution. We both continually will vote for right-wing parties because we know there's no solution, right? None of us believe in merits. We don't expect there to be a peace treaty, right? Which means that me and you essentially are living with a problem, an unsolvable problem that we're willing to ignore. That's amazing. Right? Me and you are living in a country where, David, I think I can say this for you. I don't know if I can say it for David Manheim. He's a little more Haredi than I am. But, where when they work on the train on Shabbos, we're really okay with it. Like if this country would decide not to work on the train on Shabbos, we'd be happy.
Yeah.
But we're not gonna go out and do a hafkanah to get them to stop pulling the train on Shabbos, right? Those are problems. Now, it's not a problem building a train on Shabbos. It's a problem. How is a modern country supposed to function to have a train? I'm saying all those problems. It was in the Jewish state what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has done. I speak about this very often on Yom Ha'atzmaut, right? But what a Jewish state has done is it's created a whole new set of problems for Klal Yisrael that they couldn't have possibly have to contend with unless they were in such a situation. And that's what's been going on over the course of the last 70 years. The guys in Chutz La'aretz, The big question is the obvious question. I've said it 100 times. You daven 3 times a day. Oh, what's nidachenu translate about? Anybody have a good translation for nidachenu? I'm just curious what nidachenu means. Look, the nidachim in the big houses with the pool and the boat. Those nidachim. I'm just curious which nidachim we're talking about. Which nidachim? I'm curious to know what we're talking about, right? So how do you justify? Okay, you could say Eretz Yisrael, the time of Mashiach. Okay, good. There are answers for everything. Are they solutions? They're big problems, right? The day school problems are massive in America, right? Pay a fortune of tuition for my kid not to come out of school from, and to not know anything, right? And those aren't small problems. They're local problems, but there's a buildup of all of them that point to Klal Yisrael has to deal with serious issues. Right? But this is not my chiddush, obviously. But the Meshech, this is a famous Meshech Chachma when he talks about what leads to Churban. Every time there's Churbans, the Klal Yisrael can pretend it's doing something as things get better, and then things get to a point where there's nothing more to do, and things get worse, and they have to go over it again. Those are real obvious problems. Those are really obvious problems. So, does that answer your question, David? I think the problems are all the ones we try to avoid thinking about.
I think so. Sometimes I see in examples where the problems actually turn out to be the solutions. I know Rebbe mentioned with the internet, the rally against the internet. I know the example, I think I mentioned this 2 years ago in Tisha B'Av. The example I saw in the Medrash was Yosef, when the brothers thought that this Egyptian viceroy who's standing between them and their brother was the problem, and it turned out he was the solution.
And you can't argue there's a problem with the internet, but it doesn't make a difference, right?
No, not at all. It doesn't make get you any closer to the solution.
That's exactly it. Same thing, right? The Chavetz Chaim, right? Wrote the whole sefer, and we went through. A few of us got to go through the whole sefer this year. Gary and Yitz. BT's not with us because in Los Angeles it's 5 a.m. But the Chavetz Chaim goes on and on and on. This is the biggest problem in the world. Now, in Lashon Hara, he's talking about isn't just the fact that you say something bad about your friend. It's talking about this level of problem. It's talking about the fact that we live in a world where media dictates what's true, and that we somehow buy into whatever that truth is without there being any alternative. And Beremez is talking about some very big things that were going on in his time. He holds it was the biggest problem in the world in his time, which is why I wrote the Sefer. That was before internet, before media, before magazines. I don't know what he was talking about, but that's what he writes 100 times. So I'm saying those are serious problems. Those are serious problems. Being kovei, the bottom line is anytime you're kovei truth, it's ma'akev tshuva, right? We know that. That's what it boils down to. And even Shiva Asar Thomas, you talk about the Shiur Haluchos. Shiur Haluchos came because of the Maisa Egel. The Maisa Egel was essentially being kovei truth. I have my truth and I dance around it. That's the macholos, right? I build it. So
That's the problem.
These are, you guys are used to it because I talk about the problems all the time. But most of Klal Yisrael doesn't. So we have Moedim to talk about problems. Shiva Asar Thomas, Tisha B'Av. It is. They're Moedim to focus on the problems that are not local problems, but that are generational problems. That we're doing the same mistake people before us.
So, Rebbe, what I'm gathering here is that it's about the individual working on themselves. And then as a collective whole, if everybody's doing the right thing, then when you take a step back, you see, okay, we've got something here. Kind of like you said with all the Mirpeset minyanim that were happening in Har Nof.
It's a little bit different than that because I'm convinced. I mean, I hope this isn't courses, but I'm really convinced. I shouldn't say it's for sure not courses. Look, there were two. The Gemaras that come along and say they could have had Mashiach in the time of Cheskio, except you didn't say Hal, right? And there are a number of things like that. People said in 67 had the From move 2 steps to the non-religious, and the religious move 2 steps. The From Mashiach could have come. What does that mean, right? Mashiach is obviously going to come. Mashiach is going to come. Nothing's going to make Mashiach come. Not Chabad, not Eish HaTorah. It's not going to make Mashiach come. None of this stuff, right? But what could happen? You have to say. It's an ikr of Amunah that he could come. B'chol Yom Shiavo is an ikr of Amunah because he could, because Tshuva is b'fichubel v'vechalasos, Moshe Rabbeinu says. The internal issue is it's only internal, it's not external. It's shaykh for everybody to do it. But the way the Bria seems to work, to me, and this is the part I was a little worried about saying, but I think it's really true, is that the historical development of society and the travails that the world as a whole goes through, which always focus on Yisrael, go through 1,000 years, 2,000 years of history, will always focus on Yisrael, always. Will end up, I don't know how coronavirus does, to be perfectly honest with you. I have to be honest with you, I haven't seen it yet. I don't see how that's a Jewish problem in particular, but though it did, it affected, I mean, I shouldn't say that. I would take it back. The frum communities all over the world were hurt by corona on 5, 6, 7 times the level, 10 times the level anybody else. In France, not just in Brooklyn and Lakewood, I'm saying in France, in every Rav in France came out was wiped out. Terrible things. Anyway, but the history itself seems to bring through, the equivalent of what we call Selden crises, the world to where it needs to be. So Max, on the love you're talking about for the individual, my vote as an individual is for me as an individual. That's 100% true. Whether or not there'll be a lot of individuals that will affect the klal, it could be you're doing it in a time period where the klal isn't shaykh to it. But you still got to worry about it for yourself. You follow? So
I do, but you go back to Parshas Vayechal, ki ish echad b'lev echad, right? The whole Vayichan Sham Yisrael neged ahar ki ish echad b'lev echad. The reward we got for that was the Torah. And perhaps we haven't had anything like that since. Because immediately after that, you had the Chet Ego.
But V'yishach b'lev echad doesn't just mean all everybody in Klal Yisrael happened to be nice that day. It means that what they had gone through, the experiences they had gone through, that got them there, allowed them to have a kishach b'lev echad. And achinami, the experiences were, look, you see how naturally and how the derech hateva, the entire geula looks like it's coming. I could be wrong. Maybe Satmar's right, and I'm completely wrong. But it doesn't. I'm saying you see it's b'derech hateva. So that's what I'm saying. You can't necessarily worry about all of Klal Yisrael's problems, but you can't ignore all of Klal Yisrael's problems as much as you're part of that problem. So your avoda needs to be my understanding and focusing on my tinus, right? These are tinus tziburs. And that's the Rambam saying, by the way. It's Yomim Shekol Yisrael Misanim Mehem is what leads to the idea of it's the same thing, us and our avos, because this is a klal issue. It's not a personal issue. There are personal ramifications on every klal issue, and my avoda evolves around my personal problem within that. Right, my personal, whatever ma'akev, my personal tshuva within that. Because these things are ma'akev, our personal tshuvas. They are. Our paradigms, the things we take as given are always ma'akev, our personal tshuvas. But in terms of the klal, only if I bought into something. Baruch Hashem, I don't think there's anybody on this screen that has bought into, the klal. That's one of the terrible things we do to people in Derech Yitzchak. Right, the whether or not that, so those things are less ma'akev you, right? But there are things that you have that are ma'akev you. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe nobody should be in Eretz Yisrael. So what's ma'akev me is this crazy thing which I think everybody should be. I don't know. I'm saying, I have no idea. But right? And who knows? Yeah, we say David.
The fundamental problem that we have is that we live in a broken world, that nothing works, that we understand that. The solution to that, I mean, kind of trivially, is we figure out what's wrong and Mashiach comes, and then we have Malchus Beis David, and the world works again, because that's the way the world is supposed to work. Fine. So that's great, but we still don't know, to go back to David Cohn's question, on a personal level, because things are broken for me, because I'm sure about things that are wrong. What's my question? And I still don't know what. So
in your own life, it's more difficult. Within the history of Klal Yisrael, it will become obvious. That's Bria will make it happen. That's the one thing we can be sure is that Bria will make it happen. And like I said, I can tell you something. Also, I just use this example because it's such an obvious example. But if you ask somebody 150 years ago, right, how is Klal Yisrael going to get back to Eretz Yisrael and rebuild Eretz Yisrael? There's no answer to that, right, except fantasy, right? Fantasy. In fact, I point out all the time that what Herzl said to start the entire thing was the most ridiculous statement in the entire world. If you fantasize it, it will happen. No, that's not true, right? Tier 2 Enzu Agada is like, you got to be out of your mind. Right, but it happened. It happened. It didn't happen because of Herzl. It didn't happen because of World Zionist Congress. It happened because of World War I and World War II, and that's what happened. There wouldn't have been a Holocaust, there wouldn't be a state of Israel. That's for sure. No question. All the good, wouldn't have been World War I, it wouldn't have been the Paris peace talks, they wouldn't have signed, they wouldn't have given the people who are from Romania, and they wouldn't have given the Magyars Hungary, they wouldn't have given the Jews Palestine. Wouldn't have happened, right? So, but the things that led to World War I, anybody who's learned a little bit of world history know that they were so much broader than what was happening to Klal Yisrael. It was a million things. What led to World War II was broader than what happened to Klal Yisrael. But what happened to World War I for sure did. And we're as much dependent on World War I happening as anything else. And more than that, the development of the United States over the last 250 years, now it's on the way down, but on the way up, was unbelievable for Klal Yisrael. Unbelievable. Klal Yisrael should be wealthy on a level they never had since the time of Bias Rishon. Crazy amounts of wealth, right? It's crazy to allow for such a thing to happen. So that didn't happen overnight. It happened, everybody knows the United States history at least, right? And how it happened and how democracy happened, how liberal democracy happened, which ultimately, even though it's a dirty word now, was the only thing that allowed the Jews to survive. Liberal democracy is literally what allowed the Jews to survive, right? These are things that are just so much broader. So the history that's going to bring us, I don't know how we're going to get to Mashiach. I have zero idea, right? I don't believe it's going to happen, and maybe it could. This is why I won't be an Apikoros. It could happen by a bolt of lightning and a guy flying down in with a horse. I'm good with that. I'm just as good with that with any other scenario, right? But if you were to ask me how I think it's going to happen, I have a hard time believing. It's some natural buildup of the historical path of Yisrael that will lead people to a completely new way of seeing things. That will lead to. That's why, by the way, we spoke about this Pesach time. The most dangerous thing a person could do during our present matzah. And I know that some of you in America live in places where they're already completely ignoring it and pretending it went away. We did that in Israel too for a couple of weeks. Look where it got us, right? The most dangerous thing a person can do is say, things will go back to normal. And when things go back to normal, I'll be able to do X, Y, and Z. Because as I think David Cohen said it last time, maybe it's David Mann, things ain't going back to normal. Normal's gone. I don't know what's next, but normal's gone. And that if a person doesn't take advantage of the change from the normal to in their own lives, it can affect areas of parnasa, it can affect areas of how you raise your children, it can affect where it is that you live, right? It can affect the type of job you're looking for, right? It can affect all sorts of things. If you don't take that into account, if you're just like all those other, excuse the word, idiots that are out there that you read in the papers, that you see on TV, that are just waiting for things to go back to normal, you're missing an opportunity. And everybody who's intelligent knows that there are people out there we haven't heard of who are taking tremendous advantage of this. And in 10 years from now, will be the next Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates. Everyone will know who they are, because they figured out that things aren't going back to normal. And if I do X, Y, and Z, I set myself up.
The people who started Zoom.
What?
The people who started Zoom, Rebbe.
Well, Zoom was ahead of its time. But
just on what you were saying just now, Rebbe, is about taking advantage of the situation being different. I think that's what's been the hardest thing, because you're not quite sure where to shoot. When we first were off school, we were talking about take advantage, be better people. We're not going back into the same way that we're going to be as before. But I think what's happened is in society, we're learning how to, I was talking to Nosson about this, we've learned how to dodge the bullet. How we can. So there was a whole thing about, let's say, Sodom. People were frightened of being on their own. So people were working their way out of how to make it that everyone could be together, instead of perhaps experiencing something that was different. Right. And maybe.
Right. And in the end, that's a very good example, because every single person who I've spoken to has said their Seder was 100 times better this year than it ever has been before.
Yeah, 100%. Ours was amazing, but I saw people trying to adjust and trying to change it and trying to avoid it.
I just had this now in my own family. Right, a relative of mine got engaged during Corona, during a little bit Shiur time, let's say Shiur time, right? So here the weddings were still shut down to 50 people. I said to him, "Get married next week."
No,
just get married. He says, "No, I want to wait. I'm going to wait. They're going to open up, right?" And the girl's family for sure wanted a big wedding. So in the meanwhile, they opened up the halls. They went up to 250. Oh, they signed a contract with a big hall. Oh, guess what? Weddings are down to 20 now. 20.
101 is
Right, so he's going to get. So they push this. And so today, I'm telling you, today I got an email from a mother that she's not going to send your kid to Israel this year. I can understand somebody not sending their kid to Israel. So don't get me wrong. I have plenty. I just didn't like the tone of the letter. When things get better, who says things are ever going to get better? Who knows you're ever going to have another opportunity to come? I have the foggiest idea. To me,
But that's the issue that we have. We don't know. There's no target. That's I guess what you say is the point today. There is no target to Shiva. I've chatted to people about like what should we really be trying to do, and there isn't an answer. So you sort of end up in a fishbowl of like, well, there's definitely things I'd like to do and get on, but then you end up being stuck in the new normal.
Look, the Rambam says that the Rambam says that Tainus is there to open up the Darchei Tshuva. Darchei Tshuva are always a good thing. Darchei Tshuva is not Tshuva, right? And that's the point. That's for David and David. It doesn't tell you the new paradigm, but it opens you up to the ability to do Tshuva. It leads you to Tshuva, right? And that's that from the Asiyas Tshuva comes from the involvement in Tshuva comes an Asiyas Tshuva. So, but a person who's never thinking like that, right? You never have a Shiva Asar b'Tammuz. You never have a Tisha B'Av. You never have an opportunity to think like that, right? It's, okay? The Seder? Okay, y'all.
And
we
that,
only have 2 hours left of the Tainus. You guys are just getting your day started. But,
We've got to about 11 o'clock at night.
yeah, we've got a while.
And we finish here 8:15, but you started your Tainus at 11 o'clock at night. So. Oh, you started at the same time we did. You started
1 in the morning, I think it was.
Morning, yeah, I don't know. I don't have an answer for you, Coot. It's a good question, but I don't have an answer for you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I hope we'll do one more time. We won't probably do it on Tisha B'Av because on Tisha B'Av is already more difficult, but we'll try to do something before Tisha B'Av to discuss the Inyanim of Chinom, to discuss the Inyanim of Eicha and Ayaka, and okay, Seder. Okay, have an easy fast.
Thank you, Rebbe.
A meaningful fast, right? That's the new greeting. So, a meaningful fast. Okay, see you all. Nice seeing you, Ari.
Thank you very much, Rebbe. Have a meaningful fast.
Nice seeing you, Eric.
Great seeing you.
Ari, have
Rebbe,
you
I have
seen
a
your brother
question.
David lately?
Did I see my brother who?
Aryeh. No, I'm asking Aryeh if he's seen his brother David lately. That's all.
His beard is out of control, Rebbe. What's going on?
I told him my wife is in charge of my facial hair. She told me she likes it. I'm not in charge here.
Coot, you're still learning with Ari, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great. It's great. Thank you so much.
Good. He's under lockdown now, so now you're like, he can't even go to the call. He's kind of stuck in his house for 6 weeks. So.
He told me, yeah. Great.
Okay, Beseder. Nice to meet you. Leibowitz, is that Mayor? Is that Mayor Leibowitz?
That's me, Rebbe.
Nice to see you, Mayor. Wish I'd see your face. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Rebbe.
Okay, guys. I'll see you all. Have a good
Rivara?
rest of the day. Good fast. Yes, Eric.
I have a unrelated question. If I have a completely unused oven, what do I got to do to be able to cook in it?
It's not used at all?
A brand new oven?
So you have to do anything.
Turn it on.
Turn it on.
It's all good. I'm all
Read the
good to go.
instruction manual.
I was making sure there was no.
You don't have the
I don't
instruction
know the
manual. You
laws,
can probably
really.
Google it and it'll download.